It first began when I was 7 years old. One summer night, I was trying to sleep and I thought we were having an earthquake. I sensed a presence outside my window and a strong shaking, rolling sensation, as if we were having an earthquake. It seemed like it lasted for a minute or so. The next thing I know, it is morning and I am laying in bed. First thing I asked my parents in the morning is if they felt the earthquake last night. They said no, and I thought that was odd. I went for a swim in our pool and experienced some pain in my genitals. I'm not going to go into all the details, but I had small incisions and white things under my skin which I was able to remove. It was painful, especially in the shower and in the pool. Then I thought maybe this is what a wet dream was. So I told my friends on the way to school that I had a wet dream. When I explained the details, they said that that's not what a wet dream is. I then replied I must have been abducted by aliens. Years went by, but I always remembered that experience and wondered about it. Since then, every so often, I have woken up with strange, unexplainable cuts on my skin. They are straight lines 2 to 5 inches long, red and lightly scabbed, but they would heal quickly. They occurred in places some of which I can't even reach, like on my back. Once I woke up covered with 30 scratches. My girlfriend at the time noticed them and asked about them. I did not have an explanation. She was sleeping in the same bed with me the night that happened. I have woken up with these scratches on and off over the years. Sometimes it seems like years go by, and then, just when I think things are starting to get normal again, I'll wake up with a new set of scratches. I am currently married now. A couple of months ago, my wife and I were sleeping. My wife woke me up early in the morning and was disoriented. She said she went to bed with her clothes on, but now she was naked and could not find her clothes. She also said she heard weird noises outside our window and had strange dreams. I woke up with weird scratches on my skin that morning as well. I have never shared with her my experiences or beliefs and do not plan to. I have no memories of ever seeing an alien, but logically, this is the best theory I could come up with. I have not undergone hypnosis to try to recover memories, and I don't really want to. I would rather this never happen to me, and it is somewhat scary to think about. Overall, my health seems fine, and if they wanted to harm me, they easily could, but seem not to. I have no real interest in going to UFO conventions. They seem like they're mostly full of crackpots. And also, once you associate with that group, it has a negative stigma. People tend to think you are crazy. Most of the information I have found online has been interesting, but I am skeptical, as there are a lot of weirdos out there, so I take everything with a grain of salt. I hope that one day this will all make sense. These events took place when I was 8 years old. I am now 27. I've gone for long stretches of time without thinking about these events. The story that follows is the best recollection I have. As I said, I was 8 years old, a scrawny 70 pounds and short 4 feet tall. By this time, I developed what was once thought to be a severe case of ADD, later discovered to be the result of a subdural hematoma during infancy. I mention that because my imagination was as active as it possibly could be, and I've never quite ruled out the possibility of the overextension of my own vivid thoughts. At that time, it had become difficult for me to sleep in my own bed. Often, I'd sneak into my parents' room and sleep on the floor. Other times, I'd sleep with my dog at the top of the stairs on the second story. This night was a bit different. I'd come to sleep in front of my parents' door. My dog was locked in the room with my dad, and my mother was out for the evening. I laid there, attempting to sleep, when I entered some type of fatigue state, disassociating myself with most of my own thoughts. It seemed more like what I now know to be hypnagogia, the transition back and forth between rest and wakefulness. I can remember my dog barking at the door as the ground shook, not a lot, but enough that you could feel it reverberate in your body. I remember feeling quite cold but peaceful, something I have not felt since. Then, the strange sensation of floating. I believe at this time that I was more towards the sleep state, as I have no visual memory of floating, only the sensation that comes from proprioception. Next, I remember the feeling of cold, like surgical steel that isn't accustomed to body heat. I remember hearing chirping sounds, like spoken words indistinguishable by my own ears. I still had a sensation of peace, maybe of numbing. At this same time, I felt utterly alone and cold. It smelled clean, like a hospital, but these were smells I've never had since. I caught a few glimpses of their faces, grays from what I remember, albeit rather faintly. I remember tasting blood. The next thing I remember, I was being woken up by my mom while being licked profusely by my dog. I told her I wanted to take a bath, and she told me to be quick. When I got into the bath, I noticed small drops of blood and small laceration on my knees and legs. Maybe 10 or 20. They took 3 weeks to heal and left no visible scars. My mom told me it must have been the carpet. I never told her that story. At 10, I became obsessed with UFOs. I downloaded and printed everything I could, from Russian sat maps of Papoose Lake to entire novellas on Roswell. Around this time, I began to have very vivid images of a craft, triangular in shape with 3 round lights on the bottom. I began drawing this image, and it would come to consume part of my thoughts for some time. At some point, I came to see, or I thought I saw, the same craft somewhere near my house one night. My wife and I had a weird experience, something I was more curious about than her at the time. We lived in Tennessee and we were really poor, so we slept on a memory foam map on the floor in our living room. We later upgraded to a futon, but that's not really important. I always slept on the left side, next to a coffee table we had, and one night I woke up really uneasy. I remember seeing what looked like a red laser pointer beam darting side to side really fast on the side of the table, as it was very low to the ground. It is important to note I had my back turned to my wife, which was also the source of the light, and I was so tired and out of it that I really didn't think too much of it. I just remember waking up and seeing it and thinking how weird it was as I fell back asleep. A couple of hours later, I woke up laying flat on my back. I opened my eyes and just felt awake. It had to be 3 or 4 in the morning. I felt uneasy and didn't like how I just woke up suddenly feeling so alert. Then within a minute of me waking up, my wife creepily just sits straight up from being in a dead sleep. The issue I have with this is how she sat up. It was so fast, and her body didn't move naturally. I tried to recreate her movement, and I couldn't do it. She didn't bend or curl her back like a normal person would while using their abdomen to sit up. She stayed flat and just sat up all unnaturally. I immediately rubbed her back after this happened and just started saying, "It's okay, baby. You're just dreaming. You're fine." The thing that bothers me is how I didn't feel fine when she did that, and I was almost telling myself that it was okay. I was just really uneasy that night. Here's the worst part. The next morning, I was telling my wife what happened, as she didn't remember, and she explained what she was dreaming about. She told me in her dream she was on an operating table where entities had abducted her and were getting ready to cut into her. She kept trying to tell them to stop in her dream, but they didn't care, so she sat up as hard as she could. I had no idea until the next morning that she was dreaming about that. She thought it was just coincidence, but the red light I saw, coupled with me waking up in such a weird way, right at the perfect time for her to sit up, was not just coincidence. This happened to me in middle school, I think the 7th grade, so I was about 13. For some context, I live in the suburbs in a 2-floor home. I slept on the 2nd floor, and next to my room was my brother's and my parents'. My room has a walk-in closet on the far wall from the door, and next to that is a window. My bed is next to the door opposite to the wall. I went to bed as usual around 10:30 p.m. when all of a sudden I woke up around 3 a.m. laying on my back with my arms and legs spread out, with no blankets, just my pajamas on. This was very strange for me to wake up like this, because I normally slept on my stomach. Anyways, I wake up and hear this very loud humming and find myself unable to move. I was scared shitless, but I tried getting up and found myself unable to move any part of my body except my neck. I pick my head up as much as possible and see this blue light shining from where should have been the window. Around the light, I see multiple silhouetted figures. I was freaking out. These things were pointing and moving, definitely communicating. I tried yelling for help, but I couldn't make any noises. It was impossible to speak. Then the humming intensified until it ultimately stopped, and I was able to move my body. After the paralysis ended, I found myself in bed. I hid under the covers and faced the wall. I heard strange noises in my room, and had the sensation of being watched for what seemed like forever. I finally got up enough courage and looked around my room and saw nothing. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. This has happened 2 more times and hasn't happened in a few years. This could easily be sleep paralysis, but I'm not sure. My brother also told me about a dream he had when he was younger. In it, he floated out of the window and followed some light. Sometime in the middle of October 2010, I was up late playing computer games in my bedroom on the 2nd story of my home here in Harleysville, Pennsylvania. I was getting tired around 12 a.m. and decided to go to sleep around 1 a.m. I fell asleep quite quickly in nothing but my boxers. Before I go into detail about the encounter I experienced, allow me to explain the layout of my room. My bedroom is on the 2nd story on the southwest end of my home. I have 3 windows in my room on the front face of the house and have access to both the attic and the only fire escape on the building. This house used to be an old office building in which my bedroom was one of the offices used. My actual bed is located in the southwest corner next to a window and directly next to the fire escape door. This door has no handle on the outside and only a bar release on the inside, similar to what you would find on the inside of a school entrance door or office building. The door also has a window in the top center. The actual fire escape on the outside of the door is nothing more than a metal platform and railing leading down the side of my house with metal stairs. I often use this to have a cigarette when I am at home, since smoking inside the house is forbidden by the landlord. With that being said, I am quite familiar with what the scenery on the outside of my house looks like in this location. I awoke on this day around 3 a.m. based on the darkness of night outside. However, when I awoke, I was already outside on my fire escape platform. I had not been dreaming as far as I could tell, since everything was as it was when I was awake. I have had many vivid, almost lucid dreams in the past, and I could tell you this was not that sensation. I was very groggy and confused as to how I had walked in my sleep. I have not slept walk since I was about 8 years old. At this time, I was 19, almost 20. I immediately noticed something very, very large above me after this initial confusion, and took quick notice to my door being closed behind me, leaving no way of re-entering my home. As soon as I noticed this, I felt the urge to look at this large object hovering above me. As I looked up, I noticed it was sort of rounded in shape but had many lights on the underside of it. It was directly above me, so I had no view of the sides of the object. The lights were a very bright white, nothing like any fluorescent bulb I have ever seen. These lights were flashing without any pattern, it seemed, and were located all over the underside of the object in a rectangular and very long trapezoidal shapes. The object had to have been at least 250 feet in diameter, possibly larger. The underside of the object also had many things jutting out from it, with these lights on it as well, but I took a firm notice to one in particular. There was this large piece with the lights on the side of it coming out from the right of the object. Its shape was like an upside-down cone with the end cut off. It resembled an air filter for a high-performance engine in a car. It had symmetrical lights all around its sides that were identical to the ones on the underside of the object. However, the bottom of this piece jutting out was a very dark gray color. When I first looked up, the lights were so blinding that I had to shield my eyes with one hand to see their shapes and locations. I observed all of this within less than 90 seconds before I became very disoriented. I forgot what I was doing, where I was, and who I was, almost as if these lights were inducing an acute case of amnesia. The last thing I remember before passing out was this strange sensation of floating. I have never experienced this before, but it was as if I was suddenly weightless. My feet were no longer touching the cold metal platform. As soon as I was blinded by the lights that were flashing, I seemed to have lost consciousness. Unless the lights caused me to forget everything, leaving me no memory of anything afterwards. Throughout these short minutes, the object made absolutely no sound. It was as if it was making everything around it completely quiet. If you ever hear the saying, "silence is deafening," I would have to agree. There were no sounds made after I noticed the object above me. This was extremely strange since my home is on a main road and relatively close to the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Hearing not even the sound of a cricket chirp or the hum of the highway was definitely weird. I also remember the silence being almost suffocating. It felt very heavy, as if it was making the air thick like soup. In my short and very close observation, I remember the object being about 20 to 40 feet above me, and the space in between my house and the neighbor's house. The tree in between the front of our homes was blocking out a portion of this large object. There was no wind. It was as if time had stopped in its tracks. After I lost consciousness, it got extremely bizarre. I remember waking up without any senses except for my sight and sense of balance. I was laying down with my eyes looking upwards towards what seemed to be a ceiling. My eyes were not working correctly though. It was as if I had been administered eye drops that you would get at the doctor's to dilate your pupils. Everything was very blurry and disoriented. I remember very little, but I do remember everything was a green, brown, gray color around me. I also remember seeing strange objects above me that appeared to be tools or examination equipment above me, none of which seemed to be created by humans. It was very blurry though, so it was hard to tell if that was exactly what it was. I then remember a figure move into my view. I was unable to move at all, and my vision was very poor, so I could discern nothing about this being, other than it seemed a little taller than I am, and it had appendages like a human being. It did not speak to me. However, I heard a voice in my head. It was much less a voice than it was a feeling or emotion being conveyed. The very last thing I can remember was feeling very calm, as if this being was trying to help me in some sort of way. The trying to help you feeling I received was much less about me in particular, but more of a you, as in your race. I then saw one of the objects above me move slightly, and I lost consciousness again. When I came to, I was sitting on the edge of my bed. My bed was made very neatly, as if I had never laid down at all that night. When I looked at my alarm clock, the time was about 4:45 a.m. I tried to remember how I got there, but nothing came to mind. I tried to sleep, but my thoughts were buzzing faster than I could even keep up with. I could not sleep no matter how hard I tried that night. The only thing I kept asking myself was, why wasn't I scared or afraid throughout this entire experience? Hey guys, thank you all for watching, and if you like this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. So guys, my subscriber base is almost at 3,000, and I can't thank you guys enough for that. This channel has really grown, and I am so proud of that. I'm really happy that you guys like my videos. You guys are awesome. Except when I do hit 3,000, I want to know what special video you guys want me to do. Whatever ideas you have, leave them down below in the comments. And if you guys have a scary story you would like me to narrate, please send it to my email. And as always, thank you all for watching, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.